Well, thank you for being here. It's a great opportunity for us to talk about Northwest Harvest, to celebrate the anniversary, and to talk about where we go from here. As part of King's team, we've worked with Northwest Harvest for 15 years, and I can say that it's been eye-opening, it's been a pleasure, it's been a challenge, and every time we do the food drive at Christmas, on many sites around Western Washington and on the air, it's so heartwarming. It is my favorite thing during the holidays, is to see these people, in many cases little kids, who've saved their allowances, or moms who were in the lines waiting for food last year, who have filled their car this year because life is getting just a little bit better. And our experiences shared with the community have been tremendous. But every year when the food drive is over, we kind of ask ourselves, were some of those same people here year after year, the people in the lines, the people donating food? And is the need getting any smaller year after year? Are there things that we can do to go upstream and find out why so many people, and in some cases so many more people from year to year, are hungry and are in the food lines and are waiting at the food banks? What can we do about looking at the root causes of hunger? One of which, of course, is poverty. What can we do to limit poverty in this community that in so many ways is so rich and so wealthy and so generous and so innovative? And I think it's with that question in mind that we get people together tonight, and we hope to build a coalition going forward to look at not just how we can feed people in our community, our next door neighbors and our friends down the street who are hungry this season or next season, but how we can get at the root causes of their hunger, and how we can hope to not eliminate hunger completely, because I think that some element will always be with us. It will always be a challenge. But how can we better address the problem in our community? So thank you for your willingness to listen to the speakers tonight, and for your willingness to perhaps be part of a coalition that goes upstream to see what we can do about solving some of the root causes of hunger in our community. As I said, I think that we recognize we're not only a wealthy and a generous community, we've seen it over the decades in Western Washington, but we're also an innovative and an entrepreneurial community. We ought to be able to come up with some really creative suggestions and ideas, if not tonight, then as we go forward, to get at some of the root causes and to maybe limit the food lines and limit hunger in our community in the coming years. We have a really good panel. I'm very, very interested in hearing what the panelists have to say, because it's a diverse group of people with different backgrounds, different ideas, different approaches on the same subject that we're talking about tonight. And to kick it off, we have a really, really great guest who's come a long way to join us tonight. His name is Sam Kass, and he has a very, very impressive resume. He's a senior food analyst for NBC News. Who knew they had one? I didn't know. He's a former White House food policy advisor and an advisor on nutrition. He's a former executive director of Let's Move, and we all know what that is. And he starred with Elmo from Sesame Street in the White House kitchen talking about eating healthy food. How amazing is that, to have a person who knows Michelle personally and Elmo and a lot of people in between. Please help me welcome Sam Kass.
So I'll say Elmo is definitely the most important person or furry animal I've ever known, and one of the highlights. How is everyone? Great. Gene, thank you so much for that kind introduction. I am psyched to be here. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time, to really come together and talk about some of the most pressing issues that I think we face. But I want to start by first recognizing and applauding Northwest Harvest. Just amazing. And Shelley, thank you for your incredible leadership. But I especially want to acknowledge as well all the staff and the volunteers who, for 50 years, this organization has been fighting to end hunger and the root causes of hunger. And the fact that each month, just in this one state, this wonderful state, you're providing over 2 million meals is just absolutely extraordinary. And we know this isn't glamorous work. Nobody's here making a bunch of money or getting any fame from this work. You're doing this because you're dedicated to, I think, what is at the core of what it means to be a good human being and citizen. And that's a core of compassion and empathy, caring for those in our community, and especially helping those who are less fortunate than us. And so I just am genuinely awed and inspired when I hear the stories and see the work that's being done by this organization, organizations like this around the country. And, you know, after 6 years in Washington, and I know people can relate to this here, when you're fighting the daily fights and you're getting into the mess and you're fighting battles that you just can't imagine that you're fighting, like we're just talking backstage about the battles to ensure that kids have drinking water in schools. And that was a big old fight. And sometimes it's easy to get cynical when you're just trying to fight on and having arguments whether people should have basic food. And then I think it was always important for me to remember who it was that we were working for. And so not so long ago, I was reminded about this in a place that I didn't expect. So I was a judge on the cooking competition show Chopped. Anybody watch Chopped? Yeah, super fun show. Not really a place you'd think you're going to run into any of these issues. But it was a show, the competitors were school chefs. And one of the chefs, her name was Cheryl Barbara from high school in the community in Connecticut. And so for the main course, the sort of one of the mystery ingredients was quinoa. And but Cheryl made this delicious pasta. It was a pappardelle with sausage and rapini, a broccoli rabe, Parmesan cheese. It was crazy good. And I was like impressed, like restaurant quality good, except she just sort of threw in the quinoa into this dish, like basically raw, which was strange, of course, strange choice she made. Why you put a grain into a pasta, and I was trying to figure it out. It really didn't make much sense. And so, you know, in Chopped, you're supposed to be kind of like, have a little attitude as the judge. And so, you know, I sort of questioned her, like, well, why would you make such a decision? Sort of implying that it was a mistake. And she told me, like, sort of bluntly, that she really didn't have any idea what quinoa was, but that it was Monday. And that on Monday, she always cooked pasta. And she explained because many of her kids didn't get any food over the weekend. And she cooked pasta because she wanted to give them something that she knew that they would eat. Something that she said would stick to their ribs and something that would fill them up. Things got real quiet on that set, real fast. And everybody started welling up, and we all actually started crying. And to this day, the president still reminds me, you remember that time you cried on national TV? But I digress. But she went on to tell us that she would stuff children's backpacks with food to make sure that they had something to eat over the weekends. And just remember, this is a woman who made way less than $50,000 a year and had a family of her own. And she told me that by the time Monday came, that her kids had such hunger pains that they couldn't think about school or tests or learning. Like, that was the least of their concerns. And the data supports what she's saying. The devastating fact is that this is true across our country, and it's absolutely unconscionable. 1 in 6 of Americans are food insecure. And that number includes 1 in 5 children who do not have food on a consistent basis at some point throughout the year. That's 16 million children, or 20% of the young people in this country. And those aren't numbers. We throw numbers around like they're going out of style. Those are people. Those are young people who are smart and caring and have the potential to grow up to be scientists and doctors and teachers and investment bankers and all kinds of amazing things. But all of that is in jeopardy when they don't have the basic nourishment that they need. In Washington, it's about 1 in 7 are on SNAP. And 1 in 5 Washingtonians rely on a food bank and sometime throughout the year. 1 in 5. That's crazy. So that's on the one side, and on the other side, or seemingly the other side, we have 1 in 3 of our youngest kids on track to have diabetes in their lifetime. 1 in 3. And our diets are by far the #1 cause of preventable death and disease in this country. The horrible irony of this is that many of these kids are exactly the same. A culture of health and wellness is not just about fruits and vegetables. It's also about hunger. We have to have these issues come together. We can't have one side without the other. And make no mistake, there's this crazy misnomer that people who have less money don't want good food or don't want produce. That's just crazy talk. And I think there's a lot of work to do to dispel lots of the stigmas, bias, and false truths that are being thrown in and around these issues. So I want to talk briefly, and I'm going to try not to talk too long at all because we have much more brilliant people to get into a conversation with everybody. But sort of 3 key strategies that I think we need to focus on going forward to start making more progress. The first is we have to unite these 2 issues of hunger and nutrition, of the Hunger Coalition and the Nutrition Coalition, must start uniting, much stronger than we are today. Now, when I first came into the White House, it was bad. It was like open warfare. It was crazy. I know I've said it's crazy a lot because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on when it comes to this. It's true. But I mean really like fighting like you'd think they were on the other side, they're enemies of an issue. And it's because, and this is happening all over the country, it's happening in Washington, it's happening in state houses, it's happening in local governments, because we're being pitted against one another. There's a small pot of money, and the politics are using these issues to split us. Say, well, there's $50. You can either give it to a hungry kid or you can give it some fruits and vegetables. But that's just unacceptable. And it's got to stop. And it's going to stop only when our coalition becomes strong enough, our arguments become better, where we understand this is the same issue. Some different strategies depending on where we are or what the conditions are on the ground. But these issues are one and the same. And working to forge a much stronger bond where we're showing up to any meeting, any advocate moment, any state house engagement as one. And there's no option to split us any longer. And I'll say that it's not good enough and part of where the divide has been, it's not good enough just to provide calories to people who are hungry. That's not good enough. And the leadership shown here about making sure that we're giving good, nutritious calories to those in greatest need is groundbreaking and has to continue to improve and grow. But the leadership has been extraordinary. And at the same time, on the nutrition side, it's not good enough just to give fruits and vegetables to people who can afford them, although they need more fruits and vegetables too. But the strategy from the nutrition side must be focused on making sure we're getting that healthy food to the lowest income and most vulnerable populations. But that has to become much closer. I think, two, we must dramatically broaden our coalition. And that's going to take a number of different strategies. One, and very importantly, is we need to reframe how we talk about these issues depending on who we're speaking to. So often we ask people to come to us to value our issue because we think it's the most important. But let's just take education, since we were talking about schools. And I'll sort of frame it how I would want to say it to somebody who cares about education, because it's really important that we have a lot of people who think education's the most important issue of all issues. And we want them fighting for that. So if I'm speaking to a group of educators trying to convince them to join our coalition or allow us to join theirs, I would really talk about the impact of hunger and poor nutrition on our kids' ability to learn. And let's call this young child Allison, for example. Let's say she's 6 years old and she's smart as a whip. And maybe we'll focus, for the sake of the conversation with the educators, on the most important meal of the day, breakfast. And that if she's going to school where serving breakfast to all of the kids, or all of the kids are getting a nutritious breakfast, regardless of her income, we know here's what follows. She's going to get a nutritious meal that's more likely to have fruit and milk and lower in sugar and salt. Her rates of obesity are going to be less than the average child. She's going to have to visit the nurse less. Her behavior is better. She will suffer from lower levels of anxiety and depression. She's going to have better attendance. She's going to show up on time. And most likely because she's got a good breakfast there. Now, on the flip side, let's call him Johnny. Same age, also couldn't be smarter. But he's food insecure. He's not getting that nutritious breakfast. Research shows that Johnny's going to have, on average, lower math achievement and other achievement gains by kindergarten. He's going to have lower math and reading gains through the third grade, lower arithmetic scores, and likelihood that he will have repeated a grade between the ages of 6 and 11. Research shows that kids who are undernourished have poor cognitive function overall. So all of a sudden, this isn't about hunger, it's about education. But if you care about education, then you must care and fight about hunger. As an aside, we've done a lot of work on this issue, and we've made a lot of progress. We were talking backstage about the community eligibility program, which for any school with 40% or more free or reduced population in their schools get universal breakfast and lunch for every kid in that school. Now, when we talk about this, we can also show that for schools who have done this, the programs who make sure our kids are getting a good breakfast, they're seeing math and test reading scores go up by 17.5%. Now, I haven't heard of too many education interventions that in one swoop can see those kind of test scores go up by 17.5%. Now, all of a sudden, you're speaking their language. And that kids who get a nutritious breakfast are 20% more likely to graduate high school. 20%. You don't have to care about hunger, and that's fine with me. If you care about kids graduating and we can get you to join and work together, that's success. And I think this is true for lots of different areas of our community. We know hunger and poor nutrition is undermining all kinds of sectors, our healthcare sector, our economy, and on and on. And so framing these issues in a way that really makes sense, I think, is going to be critical to broadening our coalition. And third, and this is not a secret, but couldn't be more important, is we have to get much more engaged in politics and policy. Votes matter. Votes really matter. They matter on the city council, they matter in the mayor's office, they matter in the state, they matter in the federal level. And part of the reason, a huge part of the reason why our politics fails on these issues is because the people who have a stake in them aren't voting. And so long as that continues to be the case, we're going to continue to fail to meet the needs on a policy and politics level of these issues, which are affecting so many people in this country. And we're seeing this play out time and time again. SNAP, they're at it again. Every single time we had a budget, every single time there was a PROPS, we fought tooth and nail to protect SNAP. It is constantly under siege, and it's getting worse. Block grants, work requirements, IDs, all kinds of stuff, felonies. It's all an attempt to take these basic resources away from the people who need it most. It's abhorrent. It's disgusting. I don't know how these people sleep at night. But it's eventually going to break through if we don't get more engaged. We have to get more engaged on these issues. And I think if done right, we got to make these political wins for our leaders. I think the other interesting one that's emerging, that there's a big, interesting political opportunity to really build some bipartisan support, is on the issue of food waste. Now, food waste is like taking this country by storm. Washington's getting all excited, and you guys are sitting here like, we've been doing this since like the 60s. Where have you guys been? That's fine. That's how all these kind of issues play out, where you have people before it was sexy, before it was popular, was doing the hard work, and then for a certain set of reasons, and this one faster than any one I've seen yet, just pops, right? And this one is popping. It has a lot of momentum behind it, which is key, which is really important. But right now, as a nation, we're wasting 40% of what we produce. 40. It's crazy. It just is. And part of the reason why it's getting so much traction right now is because these issues are starting to converge of health, of hunger, and of sustainability. In the face of climate change, the waste of water and all the resources that goes into producing this food for it to either rot in the field or in a landfill is just no longer tenable. And you put that in the face of hunger, and it just becomes immoral. Now, there are some simple, straight policies that we can do that could have a big impact on this. And engagement now on these issues, there's a chance you can make a lot of progress. Because this isn't food waste. It's really good food that is being thrown away. And trust me, I can attest to that. I recently cooked a meal for about 40 heads of state presidents at the United Nations. And a good friend of mine, Dan Barber, is this amazing chef in New York, and I served them all food waste, which I thought was the best idea I'd ever had until the night before I realized I was going to serve like 40 presidents food waste. But it was delicious, and it drew attention to this combination of issues that if we actually just focus on securing some of these resources, delicious, good food, which is mostly produce, by the way, that is mostly lost in retail and distribution. 60% of it is for farm, retail, and distribution. 40% is in home. But right there, we have a huge opportunity to feed people good food who need it most. So I would really think about engaging politically on this issue. But in the end, our goal, my goal, is to never have one of these events again, as much as I love you guys. Right? Our goal is to create a world where we don't need to do this anymore. We don't need to to ask for money. We don't need to ask for volunteers. Where we see a world where incomes are rising, where we have a living wage that supports hard work, that there's enough jobs for everybody, that this kind of work becomes not necessary, or at least necessary in a much, much smaller way. Now, unfortunately, we're not there yet. We're far from there. And I want to be clear, before I say what I'm about to say, that I've not been asked to say this, that this is coming from me, and in fact, I was sort of asked not to say this. But I believe it, so I'm going to say it anyways, which is that this organization is doing incredible work, and it's work that needs to be supported. And so for those who have helped fund this work, who are here tonight, or thinking about funding this work, you really got to step up, because we're at a moment where we can make a lot of progress here. And it's a check that's not like, okay, I feel good, I wrote that check, I feel like I contributed. But it's a check that's a little uncomfortable, because we know for sure that we're all going to go home tonight much more comfortable than the people and families that this organization is serving. And so it's time for all of us to really step up. And this is the beginning of a year where hopefully we can gain a ton of momentum, because it's the 50th anniversary, that we can really take the work to the next level, both in terms of the resources that the organization has at its disposal and the advocacy and engagement across the set of issues and drivers that are leading us to where we are. And with that support, I think we can all commit to improving our strategy, making the real investments in the space, and being relentless and unflinching in the belief that people have the fundamental right to have the basic food to get by. So we're going to become more effective, we're going to become more pragmatic, more strategic, and I think we're going to see tremendous progress on this issue within our lifetime. So I just want to, again, thank you all deeply for the tremendous work and leadership that is on display. I think it is a model for the entire country, and one that I think the world will be a better place if it's being done all over the states of this country. So thank you guys so very much for having me. I look forward to the conversation.